Liberals to govern as a majority is over. Jagmeet Singh's office officially informed the Prime Minister's office of their decision to end this agreement 8 minutes ago. At 12:47 p.m. is what I'm told by a senior government official. This was minutes after the news was tweeted by a reporter with Sun Media announcing that the governing arrangement had ended. We're standing by, waiting to hear officially from NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh and waiting to hear from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who's in Newfoundland and Labrador, to make an announcement on a school food program. But obviously, the news events of the day will change the Prime Minister's plans. We're standing by to take you all that live. We're going to bring in reaction from various party insiders and some pollsters. But joining me now here in the Power and Politics studio is our chief political correspondent, Rosemary Barton. So, Rosemary, there's been rumblings throughout the spring and throughout the summer that this might be revisited, maybe updated, maybe changed in the fall, but here it is, ended. What's your reaction to this?
Yeah, a little bit surprising, frankly. There was a conversation happening around the cabinet retreat last week about the state of the deal. There was a lot of confidence in the fact that the deal remained, both on the NDP side and the Liberal side. In spite of that, we're told that these conversations had started a couple of weeks ago, and it seems like part of the trigger for the beginning of this conversation certainly was the rail labour dispute and the fact that the government ordered them to arbitration, where Jagmeet Singh really felt that this needed to happen at the negotiating table. Jagmeet Singh's video, social media video, is out now, and he describes some of the reasons why he has decided to leave the deal. He says that the Liberals are beholden to corporate interests, obviously pointing to the labour strife there, and that the threat of Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative cuts is too real now for them, and so they need to move away from the agreement. I think that there was also, frankly, some tension inside the NDP caucus about how much longer this could go on. If we are, say, 13 months away from an election, 12 months away from an election, they need to start distinguishing themselves, obviously, from the government. There's a difference between getting all this stuff passed and trying to take credit from it versus being able to compare and contrast yourself to the Liberal government.
Okay, I'm told we have the video that Jagmeet Singh has put on his social media platforms. We're going to play that for you now. Gmeet Singh ending the supply and confidence agreement with the Liberals.
Today, I notified the Prime Minister that I've ripped up the supply and confidence agreement. Canadians are fighting a battle for the future of the middle class. Justin Trudeau has proven again and again he will always cave to corporate greed. The Liberals have let people down. They don't deserve another chance. There is an even bigger battle ahead. The threat of Pierre Poilievre and Conservative cuts from workers, from retirees, from young people, from patients, from families. He will cut in order to give more to big corporations and wealthy CEOs. The fact is, the Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people. They cannot be the change. They cannot restore the hope. They cannot stop the Conservatives, but we can. In the next federal election, Canadians will choose between Pierre Poilievre's callous cuts or hope. Hope that when we stand united, we win. That Canada's middle class will once again thrive together. In Canada, we take care of our neighbors. That's who we are. I've embraced that value my whole life. I'm running for Prime Minister because together we can and will stop Conservative cuts. We can deliver relief and restore hope, fix healthcare, build homes you can afford, stop price gouging. It's always impossible until it isn't. It can't be done until someone does it. If we're together, nothing is impossible. And we won't let them tell us it can't be done. Big corporations and wealthy CEOs have had their government. It's the people's time.
Okay, that is the social media video released by NDP leader Jagmeet Singh announcing that he is, in his words, ripping up the supply and confidence agreement. Rosemary says the Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests to fight for people. They cannot be changed. They cannot restore the hope. They cannot stop the Conservatives. The next election will be a choice between Jagmeet Singh and the Democrats and Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. Interesting move, interesting characterization of the Liberals, and an interesting attempt to frame the choice in the next election, whenever it comes.
I mean, really, perhaps the kickoff to to the campaign, right? Whenever that happens, because certainly this doesn't mean that we're in it, we're headed to an election imminently, but it could happen sooner than maybe we are expecting, which is October of next year. They will evaluate now, I guess, on a case-by-case basis when money bills come up, confidence votes come up, what they plan to do. I guess what has to be the part to look at here, that they are going to have to convince Canadians to be believed, is that they've just come to this realization about the Liberals in the past 24 hours or 2 weeks or whatever it is, because they were comfortable in this agreement for 2.5 years. It gave not only stability to the minority government, but it also gave them some of the things that they wanted. Remember, that agreement had very clear expectations, and some of those things have been reached or are about to be reached. So the government fulfilled its part of the deal, in my view, whether it be dental care, the beginning at least of pharmacare, whether it be the anti-replacement workers legislation, whether it be housing accelerator. There are a lot of elements to this deal the government has nailed down. I don't see the NDP walking away from things that are in progress. So bringing the government down, for instance, before pharmacare has been sort of put to bed, or the election bill for that matter. But the to-do list was essentially over. And now, as you point out, the defining part, which will lead to the election campaign, begins. But these new criticisms of the Liberal Party are very much just new, right? And that's what they'll have to convince Canadians of, that they've suddenly realized that this government is not the one that they were supporting.
Yeah, there are a few things left to do, but they are not sort of the fundamental cornerstones of the Supply and Confidence Agreement. There's some sort of a Safe Long-Term Care Act, which the agreement stipulates must guarantee seniors the care they deserve no matter where they live, which is really something that's very much in provincial jurisdiction, but something the Democrats have never really worried about that in their policy demands. And some work on election changes, right? That election legislation. But to get this explanation from the NDP, to probe deeper than that social media video, it is going to have to wait. No news conference today. No members of the NDP caucus available today. No members of the party leadership available today. In fact, an email went out to the NDP caucus saying no one should talk to journalists or do interviews today and tomorrow, and every media request should be forwarded to the media team. So we know Jagmeet Singh is going to have a news conference explaining himself. That is going to be in Toronto, I believe, tomorrow. You can see there on the screen people were watching for the Prime Minister, who's in Rocky Harbour, beautiful Rocky Harbour, Newfoundland and Labrador on the west coast of the island, where they're announcing one of the school lunch programs that is a part of the agenda that they have rolled out, Rosie, as they try to sort of regain the trust of Canadians. And on a day where they're launching this, as people go back to school and you're going to start feeding hungry kids, and you've got the only other Liberal Premier, at least provincially, with you there today, your main partner pulls the plug.
Yeah, pulls the plug, and let's be clear, one of the parts of the agreement, and this is the problem with politics, is that there was no surprises condition on the agreement.
That was the big one. Yeah. That's over. That's broke.
That's right, and that meant that neither side could surprise the other about something that they were going to do. So no poison pill in a bill, and certainly not this. Calling PMO, I think, had wind of this earlier because there were tweets saying an announcement was coming, so you can speculate on what that would have been.
And NDP MPs like Matthew Green were out saying we need to revisit this agreement.
They had
right?
previously said that.
So
they probably can put two or two together. But if the call only came, as you said,
12:47.
I mean, that's kind of raw, right? That's kind of declaring war as much as they can on this Liberal government that they've supported. It's interesting too that that Jagmeet Singh is using a lot of language in that social media video that makes me think of the Liberals when he talks about hope and all those kinds of things. He's borrowed some language from Jack Layton, saying never let them say it can't be done, and he's saying that he wants to be Prime Minister at a time when he has had no bounce in the polls, let's be clear, right? Like this deal has not led to an enormous amount of public opinion support for the NDP. And that's what's driving this too. Like they need those numbers to start changing as they get closer to an election if they actually believe that they are competitive. And they are trying to distinguish themselves not only obviously against the Liberals, but against the Conservatives, because we've seen them too make plays for the Labour vote.
Well, and it's a key point too, because there is the next election. But before we get there, we have a couple of by-elections coming up on the 16th of September. Le Salle-Mard-Verdun, David Lemaitrie's old seat, which is, I am told, is a three-way three-way race between the Liberals, the New Democrats, who have a very good local candidate, Mr. Sauvé, and the Bloc Québécois, all within margin of error, is essentially how it's been described to me by multiple parties. But then there's Elmwood-Transcona, which is an NDP seat that Daniel Blakey left vacant when he left to go work for Wab Kinew in the Manitoba government. NDP is in real trouble there. The Conservatives have a real shot to win that, and the NDP have a path there. They hope to win it, and being lashed to the mast of the SS Trudeau Liberals has been problematic for them in a way that Pierre Poilievre has been able to associate them so completely with the Liberal government that they have no capacity to sell themselves as change. This seems to be a clear attempt at that for the short term, the medium term, and maybe the long term.
Yeah, and I will say, like, you saw Pierre Poilievre last week calling for Jagmeet Singh to do this very thing, knowing, or perhaps thinking, that it wasn't possible, that Jagmeet Singh doesn't want an election right now, which I think both those things can be true. But if you read our colleague Aaron Wary's piece from the weekend, he also points out that for the NDP to walk away from this agreement actually opens up some interesting problems for the Conservatives as well in terms of election timing. Because if the NDP decides, well, we're not going to support something, what will the Conservatives do? My guess is they're happy to pull the plug. But it does put them in a kind of different position as well politically in terms of what their next moves are. You know, for Jagmeet Singh to do this, I think is also very much about his own leadership. You know, there had been talk, sort of ongoing talk about whether he was doing the right thing for the party, whether he was an effective leader. I'm not saying anyone was coming for his job, but there were some of those questions. And this also then sort of, I think, solidifies him as the leader of the party, able to make these tough decisions. My producer, Lisa, sent out a little bit earlier the last interview I did with Ed Broadbent before he passed away about one of his books. And one of the things he said in that interview was that supply and confidence agreement is great because we get things, but it is going on far too long.
And they didn't get enough.
That's right. And he said it should have lasted a year. They should end it a year before the election, which is effectively now what they've done.
Yeah, okay, so just to give people an idea, catch them up on what's going on here. Jagmeet Singh has announced on his social media platforms that he is pulling the plug on the supply and confidence agreement with the Justin Trudeau Liberal government. It's been in place since March of 2022 and was supposed to run until June of 2025 when Parliament rises to effectively allow the government to function as a majority to pass 4 budgets. That 4th budget, obviously, now a big question mark. He took aim at the Trudeau Liberals, saying that they are essentially weak, selfish, and beholden to corporate interests, so much so that they can't fight for ordinary people, and that he is trying to define the next election as a choice between his New Democrats and their offer of hope, and Pierre Poilievre's Conservatives and their offer of cuts. We are standing by to hear from Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who's about to hold a news conference in Rocky Harbour, Newfoundland and Labrador, and we are bringing in some of our by the way, I'm David Cochran, I'm the host of Power and Politics. I'm not usually on this time of the day. We are bringing in some of the regulars from our show. Greg McEachern, Fred Delory, and Melanie Richer will join us. Melanie Richer, of course, is a former NDP Director of Communications. And Rosemary, she had said to me this summer when we were looking ahead, she said, watch the supply and confidence agreement right after Labor Day. She said, I think the NDP are going to get out into their ridings, they're going to be talking to people, and they're going to come back and they're going to revisit this whole thing. I don't know if she knew something back then and was holding out, or she's just very prescient, but here we are. This budget next spring, next winter, next spring, whatever it is, that now seems like an inflection point on the life of this government, because if they can't count on the NDP unless the Bloc Québécois somehow finds a way to vote for a Liberal budget, we're headed to an election over that budget, if not before.
Yeah, very, very possibly. And I guess she was very prescient. I do think that the rail stoppage probably galvanized some of those views, because it was very much not what the NDP wanted to see. But you can understand, for economic reasons, perhaps why the government made the decision that it made. I think we should talk about, even though they're abandoning the deal, though, it was successful. Not only did it last 2.5 years, it is the first deal of its kind at the federal level. It allowed this minority parliament to last much longer than it would have. And it brought both parties the opportunity to bring some progressive policies to Canadians. So from all of those points of view, for them, it was a success and could be replicated going forward. But there has to be an end date to these kinds of things. And if you know the election is coming sooner rather than later, or not, you have to be able to start talking about why you're different. And that's the thing that Jagmeet Singh was not able to do before today.
It's interesting, though, how you define success when you look at an arrangement like this. So yes, dental care has moved. It's in the somewhat advanced stages, but as each new deal gets cut with a different province, it's Mark Holland, the federal Liberal Minister of Health, who is out talking about it. It is not, Don Davies, who was a big part of negotiating a lot of these things in the very beginning, the NDP MP. And so while they have had success on the policy front, politically, both the Liberals and the New Democrats are almost like drowning together as Pierre Poilievre surges in the first place. And so politically, there were people at the beginning saying, yeah, this is going to give you parliamentary stability. Politically, though, they think it's going to be an anchor for both. And certainly, you could make the argument it appears to have been that way. Now, I'm hearing from Liberals who say this is a performative move by the NDP, that they don't think they're actually going to vote against anything and vote the government down, because there's a Saskatchewan election where New Democrats are going to be busy. There's a BC election where New Democrats are going to be busy, and they kind of can't force a national campaign on top of that. So we're probably going into 2025 for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree. I mean, I don't think it's going to be this fall. I think that's probably not realistic. Could it be this spring around a budget? Possibly. Would that be the worst news for the Liberals? Maybe not. Maybe a budget is an awfully good thing to start campaigning on. I think that I think that all your points are right. This isn't good, wasn't good politically for particularly the NDP, but ultimately for both parties. But I don't know that the Liberals will be extremely upset about this, because they knew too that it wasn't going to last forever. Though, let's remember that just last week, Karina Gould had said that she was confident the deal was going to continue. Yeah,
and Karina Gould, if you're watching, we would love to speak with you. Certainly by 5 o'clock live here on Power and Politics. As the government House Leader, you now have to find a way to make a minority parliament work now that Jagmeet Singh has publicly and formally and officially announced that the New Democratic Party is ending the supply and confidence agreement with the governing Liberals. That shot you see there on the side of the screen, we are waiting for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He's in Rocky Harbour, Newfoundland and Labrador. He is making an announcement with Jenna Sudds, one of his cabinet ministers who's been responsible. She is the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development. Lawrence McCauley, the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food, is also going to be there. And Goody Hutchings, of course, because this is her riding, this being on the west coast of Newfoundland, Rocky Harbour being one of the major towns inside Grossmore National Park. And interestingly, this is about school lunch. Andrew Furey, the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, is going to be there. When I spoke to him from Halifax back this summer when the premiers met, school lunch and intrusion into jurisdiction was one of the issues that he and other premiers were raising as a concern about the agenda of the federal Liberals and not respecting their jurisdiction enough. But now federal money is on the table, and they've all gathered together, Rosie. And this kind of speaks to the challenge. This is a clear attempt for the Liberals to try to put the Prime Minister in front of the cameras with a good news story. This is a program that, if you look at Pierre Poilievre's social media feeds, he's been saying this cost millions, hasn't fed anybody, even though it's a program that's only starting now. Lawrence McCauley has just walked in. You can see the ministers and MPs lining up there, so we expect the Prime Minister anytime. So it's important for them to have it roll out and to get it going and getting it with a friendlier provincial government, because there aren't a lot of them out there right now. But then this happens. And next week they have their caucus retreat, and this is going. They felt like they had calmed the waters after losing Toronto St. Paul's, and now they go into caucus sandwiched between the end of SACA and the by-election, especially the one in Montreal that they could lose.
Yeah, and I've heard the same things, that it is remarkably tight, and obviously shouldn't be. That's Paul Martin's old riding, David Lemaitrie's, as you point out. That is perhaps not a stronghold, but almost that. This is going to complicate caucus. That being said, I do think that the fact that Pierre Poilievre was able to lump these two parties together, even call them a coalition, although they are not formally a coalition, was super advantageous to him, right? And he still will probably use that language. But there's an opportunity here for everyone to distinguish themselves. There's an opportunity now for the Liberals to say, we did these things, we're the ones who did it. Like, take all the credit. Liberals will talk about how Jagmeet Singh, I think the Prime Minister's even talked about how he doesn't mind the NDP taking the credit, because when you have to ask a Canadian who did this for you, it's a Liberal government. And so they'll be able to make that argument more successfully now. Is it bad news for the Liberals in terms of stability? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that makes things problematic for a government that is riding so low in the polls and is hoping that time will improve their fortune. That's the one thing they had going for them. Jagmeet Singh has sort of taken away that key factor now.
Yeah, time is what they were counting on, and that time, the runway, has just been shortened for them,
right.
because who knows how much longer this is going to go. Okay, we're going to start bringing in some people to react to this breaking news that the NDP have ended the supply and confidence agreement with the Liberal government, casting into doubt the timeline of the next election and the life of this minority Liberal government. The CBC's Kate McKenna has been following along and watching all of this as well, and she joins us now. Kate, I don't even know what to ask you, because this is all happening so fast. What are you hearing and seeing from your perch?
Well, just to pick up on what Rosie mentioned there, caucus is set to be happening shortly. We know that Atlantic Caucus right now is also meeting in Newfoundland. So hearing from some Liberals who are just reacting to this news, just learning about this news and wondering how this is going to impact the fall sitting as it is approaching, starting on September 16th. So just looking ahead, as Rosie mentioned, they will be voting, or they're planning on voting on a case-by-case basis. So I took a quick look at what some of the legislation is coming forward. One of the things that will be voted on is the Online Harms Act. And we did hear from the NDP that they're looking at possibly changing that a little bit, but that they overall support that. There's also a bill coming up, Gender Discrimination in the Indian Act. There's also another bill coming up for debate on amending the military justice system. So as you mentioned, Karina Gould, this might be surprising news for her. We did hear from the House Leader last week saying that she thought that this was going to carry on into the next year. So will this change their strategy going into the House? How are they going to adjust? Will we be seeing a different legislative priorities? And this, of course, is all happening in the context of difficult polling for the Liberal Party and for the NDP, honestly. The Conservatives have been ahead by double digits, sometimes more than 20 points ahead of the Liberals for more than a year. How will this change the Conservative strategy? We know, of course, Rosie mentioned that the Conservatives called last week for Jagmeet Singh to rip up this agreement. That probably did not factor into his decision that he made today, but they're calling for an earlier election. They want to see an election in October. That would be very fast if that happened. It's probably not super likely to happen. But this really kind of changes the conversation that's being had on Parliament Hill already, even though this news has only been out for about an hour. So it'll be very interesting to hear what the Prime Minister has to say when he starts talking.
That is the understatement of the day, Kate McKenna. That'll be very interesting to hear what the Prime Minister has to say. His office found out 30 minutes ago, 13 minutes to 1 o'clock Eastern Time, 12:47 they found out. This was minutes after Brian Lilly of Sun Media tweeted out the internal NDP letter announcing it. So the NDP Liberal Supply and Confidence Agreement revealed to the world by a conservative-leaning columnist. Okay, there's a lot to talk about. So we've brought in our panel of insiders. You've seen them on Friday on Power and Politics.
Okay,
Greg McEachern. Kate is still there. Hi. All right, Kate. We're going to bring in Greg McEachern, former Liberal ministerial staffer, Melanie Richer, former communications director for the federal NDP, and Fred Delory, joining us there on the big screen, former national campaign manager for the Conservatives. I'm going to start with you, Mel. What the hell? You sort of signaled to watch for this when we all came back after Labor Day, when we spoke in the summer about what to watch for in the fall, and boy, were you right. Why are they doing this?
Right. So I think there's a few reasons. I think based on their work that they've done with the Liberals so far and with the Prime Minister so far, they've been able to get some good gains, but they were kind of feeling like this government wasn't necessarily connected to the reality of working people, of working families, and had said so. When we saw the Prime Minister come here on your show at the end of the I was going to say school session at the end of the parliamentary session. Yep. And then also, their messaging following the loss in Toronto St. Paul's. It just kind of seemed like more of, well, it's worse elsewhere, or yeah, we're looking at it, but we don't think that that's totally it. So the disconnect from the reality of what people were going through is something that the NDP had been talking about and had been hearing from folks on the ground. I think folks were really happy with dental care and happy with what they were able to get, but we're kind of signaling like, okay, what's next, and is what's next with the Liberal government. And I think internally the NDP saw that. They, I think, achieved the credibility check of convincing orange-red voters that They were able to govern. They were able to make decisions that benefited people in a real way, given the opportunity with the deal. But they were losing a little bit of support with the orange-blue voters, and I think that this is a path to gaining that voter base back and making a real bid to maybe leapfrog the Liberals and really be the alternative to the Conservatives in the next election.
Okay, Greg, I do want to get the Liberal perspective, but first I'm going to go to the Prime Minister because he outranks you in this particular conversation. This is a news conference starting in Rocky Harbour, Newfoundland and Labrador. Let's listen in. It's the principal or vice principal of the local school introducing everybody where they're set to announce a school lunch program. You can see Premier Andrew Furey there to the right of the screen, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau there to the left, former Cabinet Minister Seamus O'Regan standing in the background along with Joanne Thompson, who's the one of the St. John's MPs. You're seeing most of the Liberal caucus there, but let's listen in to this announcement where we're expecting reaction from the Prime Minister to the breaking news that the NDP have ended the supply and confidence agreement early.
I would like to ask the Honourable Minister Goody Hutchings, our MP, to speak.
Or just Goody, Megan, it's just fine. Megan, thanks, and thanks for the warm welcome here at Grossmorn Academy. Folks, look, before we get started today, I'd like to recognize we're on the traditional land of the Beothuk and the Mi'kmaq people and how important it is for us all to hold hands and walk the path of reconciliation together. Prime Minister, welcome back to the Long Range Mountains. Premier, always good to see you. Jenna, welcome to the best coast of
Okay, we
Newfoundland.
have great respect for the Newfoundland and Labrador Cabinet Minister Goody Hutchings. We're going to jump in here now as they are getting ready to make some sort of an announcement on a school lunch and school food and school nutrition program. That's why they were gathered there. We're standing by to wait for the Prime Minister to give us his reaction to what's happened with the supply and confidence agreement. But first, we're going to bring in Greg McEachern, former Liberal ministerial staffer. You know, Mel was outlining a lot of the reasons the NDP have decided to end this. It sounded a lot like the gripes and the grumbles that I heard from the Liberal caucus coming out of the Toronto St. Paul's by-election. What's your reaction to this kind of a thunderbolt from Jagmeet Singh today that is pulling the plug on this whole thing?
Yeah, as Mel was talking, I thought the same thing. It's the same thing that Liberal MPs are hearing. It might be a little different for NDP members of Parliament because they didn't seem to ever get the credit that they wanted from things like dental care. And as you mentioned, when we met in the summer, Mel indicated that there was an expectation that this might happen. I can tell you internally, the Liberals are probably not surprised. You asked me in the summer, what about the Liberals breaking this? And I said, well, then they can't point to, they helped make Parliament work. But there was a conversation about whether or not they should end it.
Okay, the Prime Minister is at the microphone. We're going to go back to Rocky Harbour, Newfoundland and Labrador, and listen to Justin Trudeau.
Just wonderful to be back here in the province with such friends. Premier Furey, Andrew, it's great that you're here today to make this important announcement together because good things happen when we work together, when all of us work together. Great to be here. Megan, thank you for your welcome. Our outstanding Newfoundland caucus, Minister Jenna Sudds and Minister of Agriculture, Lawrence McCauley. It's an opportunity for us to come together and kick off this school year in the right way. But before I get into that, I just wanted to say a couple of words about the Bank of Canada's decision earlier today. This is good news. This means that Canadians, whether it's families or small businesses or workers, are going to see a little relief with the dropping of our interest rates for the third time in a row. Canada's now the first major economy to have 3 interest rates cuts in a row, and it's because we've got inflation under control. Wages are growing faster than inflation. Our economy is in a solid position, and now we're going to make things more affordable for Canadians. So this is a good, big piece of news that Canadians can be really, really excited and reassured that we're on the right track as a country. Je veux souligner que la décision de la Banque du Canada de baisser les taux d'intérêt encore ce matin, c'est une très bonne nouvelle pour les Canadiens, pour les travailleurs, pour les familles, pour les entreprises. Ça démontre que, oui, l'inflation est sous contrôle parce qu'on a eu une gestion responsable. Les salaires sont en train de croître plus rapidement que l'inflation. L'économie est en bonne situation parce qu'on a continué de le gérer de façon responsable et ça va aider les familles d'un bout à l'autre de ce pays. part of helping families right across the country is making sure we're stepping up as even the economy is doing well at a macro level. Canadians are still facing real pressures in their daily lives with the cost of living, and that's why, as a government, we're continuing to step up. And right now, as we're seeing the school year start, we know that being there to make sure that no kids are going hungry, make sure that kids have access to good, high-quality food in their schools is both important for them and their learning. I know that as a teacher. I know that as a parent. But I also know that it's something that takes pressure off of grocery prices. The school food program that we're rolling out across the country as provinces sign on is expected to save hundreds of dollars, up to $800 for a family with 2 kids across the country. And that's going to make a real difference at a time where prices are high and people are squeezed. The fact that we're able to announce this first in Newfoundland is really a testament to the work that Premier Furey has done in putting kids first and making those investments that are going to support people right across Newfoundland and Labrador. We're talking about thousands of kids who are going to have access to school food across the province. And indeed, as we continue to sign with provinces across the country, more and more kids from coast to coast to coast. There's a number of provinces ready to sign on next. We're hoping Manitoba and Lawrence Macaulay's home of PEI are going to be the next 2 provinces, but Ontario's working well and others are coming on board. But we do want to put pressure on all provinces to step up and deliver for those organizations that are already delivering school food programs across school districts, in schools across their provinces that could use the money that the federal government has put on the table to make sure that no kids are going hungry, that kids can concentrate in class. This is something that is basic and important, and it's something that we're getting behind and that we need to sign on to with many provinces. On a besoin que toutes les provinces s'engagent avec le gouvernement fédéral pour livrer pour tous les organismes qui sont là pour aider les jeunes à passer à travers la journée avec un ventre bien rempli. On sait qu'il y a trop de familles qui ont de la pression sur les coûts de l'épicerie. Ça va sauver des centaines de dollars à des familles d'un bout à l'autre du pays. Alors j'encourage toutes les provinces de signer avec le gouvernement fédéral pour recevoir l'argent qu'on met là pour les jeunes. There's a lot of work to do as we continue to invest in Canadians, as we continue to grow the economy, as we continue to protect the environment and move forward. And I'm looking forward to continuing to do that work with collaborative partners like the government of Newfoundland and Labrador and many governments right across the country. Looking forward to keeping it up. But for now, I'm happy to turn it over to the Premier to talk about Newfoundland and Labrador.
There we go.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Prime Minister. And first of all, before we start, I want to not just remind Goody, but welcome everyone to my beautiful district, to Hammer-Grossmorn as well. I hope everybody who made the time to travel here gets to experience the true beauty that is this whole area. The district is absolutely spectacular. That said, a special welcome to the Prime Minister, of course, who's no stranger to this region, and always welcome
Okay,
back.
that was Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at an announcement in Rocky Harbour, Newfoundland and Labrador. That is the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, Andrew Furey, talking about the announcement they're making on a federally funded school lunch program, the first component of which will roll out in Newfoundland and Labrador. The Prime Minister, in his prepared remarks, talked about this program, also talked about the good news today of the Bank of Canada cutting interest rates as a step towards making things in life more affordable for Canadians. He did not, however, speak about the breaking news that happened just before his event started, that NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh has ended the Supply and Confidence Agreement, which has sustained the minority government and essentially allowed it to function as a majority government since March of 2022, supposed to run till June of next year, ending in September of 2024 instead of the summer of 2025. Okay, we have heard from the NDP, we've heard from the Liberals briefly. Let's bring in the Conservatives on this. Fred Delory is a former national campaign manager for the federal Conservatives. Fred, the coalition, as the Conservatives like to call it, seems to be done. What does this do to the politics of the country leading into the next election?
Well, look, we're back into the good old minority ways of government, of parliament, where any week, government could theoretically fall. And I expect right out of the gate, Mr. Poilievre and the Conservatives are definitely election ready. They want an election. And I would suspect we're going to see a motion of non-confidence be introduced as soon as possible from the Conservatives. And to really test the NDP on this. This is, if they feel the pressure has been removed now that they've walked out of this deal, I think the pressure is going to get even more intense because now they actually have to stand up and vote. Are they going to continue to prop up and keep this government alive for the little time we have left, in the sitting calendar? We have this fall and in the winter, my prediction is we're going to have a winter election. I think that's what we're heading to. I think throughout the next few months, there will be close calls, but eventually, the Liberals will squeeze through.
A winter election in Canada, Fred, is not on anyone's wish list. I wouldn't say, except maybe the Federal Conservatives.
2006 was a great one.
It was a long one, too. Okay, we do have reaction from Pierre Poilievre. It's on social media. It's a bit long. I'll just read some of it. 2 years ago, Sellout Singh, as he now calls Jagmeet Singh, sold out workers and signed on to a costly coalition with Justin Trudeau that hiked taxes, ballooned food costs, doubled housing costs, and unleashed crime and chaos in our once safe streets. There are a lot of other factors leading into those things. In today's media stunt, Sellout Singh refuses to state whether the NDP will vote with non-confidence, as Fred mentioned, to cause a carbon tax election at the first chance. And he continues to call him Sellout Singh and ties him to increasing the carbon tax and increasing the cost of goods and damaging the economy, and saying he did all of this while promising he would be an opposition voice. So, Rosie, it does sound like, as Fred is predicting, we've seen many confidence vote maneuvers by the federal Conservatives to try to force elections on a bunch of different things. The NDP have always voted with the government because that was a condition of supplying confidence. That's gone now. Well, how do you think?
It's gone, but they still can do it,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess that Pierre Poilievre is going to try and call their bluff. Both, I think, Liberals and Conservatives will say to you that this doesn't change anything in the immediate, right? But it does. It does create some instability. We've all been around enough to know that minority governments are very dramatic, can be very dramatic in terms of not knowing where the wind is going to blow. And I think we are coming up to a point where, as we were talking about earlier, the opposition parties are chomping at the bit to some extent for an election. The NDP may not be ready in terms of money and candidates and what have you, but I think they are ready to start looking differently than the Liberal Party. And certainly the Conservatives are desperate for it to happen for the reason that we talked about, that time is on the government side. That Bank of Canada rate cut is exactly the kind of thing the government wants to be talking about. And if that's just going to keep happening and things are going to keep improving, that is a key factor in how they think they rebuild their support amongst Canadians.
Well, the other thing this does is now if there are no givens on confidence votes, events like this in Newfoundland and Labrador, that's Jenna Sudds, cabinet minister, out selling an affordability measure to Canadians. They can't be on the road because they have to be in the House of Commons. So they lose the ability, Mel, to kind of like campaign and do things when there are votes scheduled. And the Conservatives are only too happy to stay in the House of Commons and push private member bills or whatever, turn things into confidence votes to try to trigger this election. And that is going to leash the Liberal cabinet and the Prime Minister to Ottawa when they need to get out and talk to Canadians.
Yeah, and I think it does that for all parties, right? You'll see all of the leaders be able to travel less. They'll need to be in Ottawa for those votes and for anything happening in the House. But I want to go back to Pierre Poilievre's statement. And of course, the news of the NDP pulling out of the deal today is a Jagmeet news, is an NDP news that folks are having to respond to. But the fact that Pierre Poilievre spent his whole statement talking about Jagmeet and talking about the NDP, to me, in addition to the ads that they've been putting out and to the stuff that they've been saying, and the shift that they've been taking lately in their messaging, is they know that Jagmeet is the person that they need to be talking about in a lot of the ridings that they want to pick up. So to me, again, if I'm the NDP and I'm Jagmeet and those folks around that table, that's not good news, because obviously you don't want to have to defend those attacks all day. But the fact that folks are spending, that the Conservatives in particular, who are so far ahead of everybody, are spending that much time talking about them is something they're paying attention to.
Okay, the Prime Minister is back at the mic taking questions. Tune in.
Your party is trailing in the polls and the Conservatives are calling for an election. Is it time to send Canadians to the polls?
We're here today because we're delivering on school lunches and school food for thousands of kids across the province, and we're making investments that are going to be helping hundreds of thousands of kids across the country as people step up. These are the kinds of things that Canadians are looking for. As I traveled across the country this summer, people talk to me about making ends meet. They talk to me about the high cost of rent and the need for more housing. They talk to me about the environment and climate change and the impacts of it. And these are the things that we're focused on. I'll let others focus on politics, but I will point out that I really hope the NDP stays focused on how we can deliver for Canadians, as we have over the past years, rather than focusing on politics.
Follow-up.
What will become of the programs that you announced as part of the agreement that you had with the NDP, such as pharmacare and dental care?
Well, we have delivered on dental care. 500,000 Canadian seniors have now accessed dental care just in the past few months, despite Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives' opposition to it every step of the way. 500,000 Canadian seniors have now had dental care, many for the first time in decades. This is a program that has helped Canadians. We still have work to do to continue rolling out dental care, and I hope the NDP will continue to fight for that. This fall, we're going to be moving forward on making sure that nobody has to choose between paying for groceries or rent or paying for much-needed insulin. Pharmacare is going to become a reality as we work on that in the House, and I hope the NDP stays focused on that. As a government, we're going to stay focused on delivering for Canadians at a time where people need that. We have, and the Bank of Canada announcement today underscored that, we have the strongest fiscal position of any country in the G7 right now. My belief, our belief is we need to set that fiscal position to work for Canadians by delivering spaces at $10 a day in daycares across the country, delivering dental care, rolling out to Canadians with disabilities and kids under 18, delivering a school food program that's going to make sure that kids don't sit in class too focused on their bellies rumbling to focus on the teacher. These are things that Canadians care about and need. These are the things that this government continues to focus on.
Next question.
Prime Minister Don Bradshaw, NTV, have you had an opportunity to think about what your fall will look like now? Will it be just a regular return to the House of Commons, or do you now have to start thinking about maybe calling an election before something happens?
I am not focused on politics. I'll let other parties focus on politics. I'm focused on actually delivering the things that Canadians told me this summer they need. I had thousands of conversations with people across the country. Very few of them wanted to talk politics. They wanted to talk how are they going to make sure that they can afford their rent as they get back to school in the fall, how they're going to be able to hope to one day be able to own a home. That's why we're investing in the most ambitious home building program the country has ever seen. They want to know how we're going to help with the price of groceries. Well, rolling out these school food programs right across the country as more provinces come on board is going to make a real difference in families' bottom lines. I'm focused on Canadians. I'll let the other parties focus on politics.
But with that said, you have to focus on politics at some point when you look at what you're doing. The announcement today, for example, the Bank of Canada rate dropping, it would seem like these would be positive signs that maybe you would want to go to the polls with. So when do you start thinking politically?
Delivering for Canadians is at the heart of what politics is supposed to be about. We're about being there to make sure that as Canadians are hurting, but as our economy is in many ways one of the strongest in the world, certainly in terms of fiscal position, we should be putting that economy to serve them. That's why we stepped up with $10 a day childcare. That's why we've stepped up with dental care. That's why we're continuing to fight for pharmacare. This is why we're drawing in investment from around the world at levels that nobody's ever seen. We're up 60% in foreign direct investment. Last year, we were the #1 country per capita among advanced economies in the G20 for companies wanting to invest in Canada. There is There is opportunity in Canada that we cannot let slide. That's what we're focused on. An election will come in the coming year, hopefully not till next fall, because in the meantime, we're going to deliver for Canadians. And the contrast with a Conservative leader that wants to cut dental care, cut the school food program, cut insulin through pharmacare, cut the programs that Canadians are relying on to help them through this difficult time, well, that'll be a political decision that Canadians get to take in an election. But in the meantime, I'm not letting down Canadians, and I'm going to stay focused on them. La réalité, c'est que depuis plusieurs années, on est là pour livrer pour les Canadiens, que ce soit au niveau des soins dentaires, que ce soit au niveau de l'abordabilité avec des investissements dans du logement, avec de l'aide pour l'épicerie, avec un programme pour les enfants à l'école, avec la nourriture.
The National Food Program. We are there to deliver, and we're going to
livrer.
continue to do that. We're going to continue to fight inside the House of Commons, and the other parties can play politics. Canadians will see, but I know that my priority is to help people at a time when we have one of the best economic situations in the G7. We should be trying to get that to Canadians and help them.
Hi, Troy Turner, CBC. Just to get back to the NDP announcement today, what conversations did you have with Mr. Singh prior to today's announcement?
I have had, over the past number of years, many conversations about how we get things done for Canadians. And that has led to things like $10 a day childcare, dental care that has made a huge impact. But both of those things have more work to do in Parliament this fall, as we're moving forward on pharmacare as well, to make sure that free prescription contraceptives, to make sure that free insulin is available to Canadians. These are things that I know the NDP should care about, because Canadians care about it. So I look forward to conversations with Mr. Singh about how we're going to continue to demonstrate that confident countries invest in their citizens, invest in their future, because that's what we're doing.
Well, leading up to today's announcements by the NDP, Pierre Poilievre had made a call to the NDP to get out of that governance agreement. Is there a fear that these two parties will form a similar type agreement? And how would that affect you leading into the next year and the next election?
I think Canadians are beginning to realize that Pierre Poilievre is wrong when he says he doesn't want to invest in food for kids at school. He's wrong when he doesn't want to see $10 a day childcare spaces created. He's wrong when he doesn't want to see free insulin go to Canadians in need who are fighting diabetes. He's wrong to not want to put the strongest balance sheet in the G7 in service of Canadians. Confident countries invest in their citizens and in their future. That's what we're doing. That's a choice he wants to take away from Canadians. And I truly believe that progressive parties like the NDP and we Liberals need to continue to deliver for people in this challenging time, because that's how we've grown the economy over the past years. That's how we'll continue to be there long into the future for Canadians.
Next question. Obliged with an answer in French as well, please.
Okay. Tout politicien a des décisions à prendre
Any
sur
politician
comment
has to
ils
make
veulent
decisions as
servir
to
les
how they
Canadiens.
want to serve Canadians.
En tant que gouvernement,
As a
notre choix a
government,
été
our
d'investir
choice was to
dans les
invest in Canadians.
Le choix de M. Poilievre,
Mr. Poilievre's choice is to cut,
de s'opposer au programme
to oppose
de nourriture
programs
pour les écoles,
such as
au
the school
programme,
food program
de garderie à
or
$10
the
à travers
child
le
care
pays,
program at $10 a day,
au programme
to
de
oppose
soins dentaires
programs
auxquels
involving dental
un
care
demi-million d'aînés ont déjà
when
eu accès.
500,000 seniors have already had access to the program. That's not the right choice, because we have a very strong economy and we should be serving Canadians through that strong economy. The NDP will have to make a choice as to whether they want to play politics or whether they want to be there to serve and deliver for Canadians. We have made our choice as a government. We will continue to be there to deliver for Canadians.
Hi, Justin Brake, The Independent. Mr. Trudeau, no doubt this is a very positive announcement in the fact that there are going to be a lot of students in this province and eventually around Canada who won't
be hungry at school during the day. I know that there are a lot of students and parents and teachers and a lot of people across the country who are wondering why, given the compassion we have for our own children here, the Canadian government remains complicit in the slaughter of civilians, including children and students in Palestine. What do you say to all the students who are watching, wondering why Canada hasn't done more to end that violence?
We have been calling for a ceasefire since December. We need to see an end to the violence. We need to see a return of the hostages. We need to see Hamas lay down its arms and stop using Palestinian children and civilians as shields. We need to see the Israeli government abide by international law and rules. And we need an immediate ceasefire. We need to get back on that path towards a two-state solution where a peaceful, secure Israel lives alongside a peaceful, secure Palestinian state. That is the work that Canada has been doing on the world stage for many months. That is what we are going to continue to do, to push for that two-state solution.
Follow-up. It hasn't really been having an impact, though, and a lot of people have been saying for months that the Canadian government should unequivocally condemn Israel, cut diplomatic ties, and categorically have an arms embargo, including sending weapons and arms goods to other countries like the United States. We know they're getting stuff from Quebec that are then being sent to Israel to bomb Palestinians. Why haven't you put an end to that?
Israel has a right to defend itself in accordance with international law. On October 7th of last year, they lived through one of the most horrific terrorist attacks in history. And we need to continue to stand for peace, for Israelis, for Palestinians in the region long into the future. That's why we're calling on Hamas to lay down its arms. That's why we're calling for Israel to abide by international law. That's why we're calling for an immediate ceasefire so that we can get massive amounts of humanitarian aid to end the ongoing tragedies that are happening in Gaza right now. This is an incredibly difficult situation that has repercussions, tangible repercussions on millions of Canadians who are worried about the rise in hatred here at home, who are worried about sending their kids to school as the new school year starts in universities and high schools across the country. We need to remember who we are as Canadians, which is fighting for our values of peace, openness and understanding, putting aside the hate and being committed to a peaceful future in the Middle East where a secure Israel lives alongside a secure and internationally recognized Palestinian state.
Next question. It sounds like you're downplaying the significance of genocide, or what could very well be genocide. You don't want to speak to the genocide piece?
Next question.
You got two questions. There's a whole bunch of other journalists. I look forward to hearing from them as well. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister Trudeau. Welcome back to Newfoundland. Hope you're enjoying your visit here.
Always.
Nice sunny day in a beautiful community of Rocky Harbour. Dean Clark, Bay FM, by the way. And what is the significance of this announcement being right here in Rocky Harbour today? Can you speak about that a little bit?
Listen, we know that Rocky Harbour, like many communities across Newfoundland and Labrador, and indeed right across the country, is a beautiful place with strong communities and strong families, but also people facing real challenges. And being able to step up in a riding and in a community that is exemplifying some of the challenges and some of the greatness that you see right across the province and the country is a really nice thing. I will say that it probably contributes significantly to it that I have both a minister and a friend who is premier who represent this beautiful community and wanting to showcase the impact of this announcement for kids here in their home districts that are going to be impactful right across the province and right across the country. For me, any excuse to come back to Grossmoor and Rocky Harbour is a good thing for me, so I'm really glad to be here.
Follow up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Last question.
Hi, Sanuda Ranawake, CBC News. Prime Minister, considering that you've lost essentially the support of the NDP, what does that mean for some of the projects that you mentioned about giving back to Canadians going forward? How much of a support are you losing here?
Well, I think the NDP is going to have to make decisions about whether or not they want to stand with Pierre Poilievre, who's going to cut the school food programs, cut dental care, not deliver on pharmacare, or whether they're going to focus on what it means to Canadians to be there to give them support through this difficult time and to be investing in the future, whether it's drawing in global investments or fighting climate change at the same time. Every politician gets to choose whether they want to play politics or whether they want to serve Canadians, and I certainly hope that the NDP will stay true to its fundamental values, which is making sure that Canadians get the support they need and keeping away the austerity, the cuts, and the damage that'll be done by Conservatives if they get the chance.
Follow-up?
Could I get an answer in French, please?
Okay. Je pense que le NPD va devoir choisir s'ils veulent jouer de la politique
whether they want to play politics
livrer
or whether they want to deliver for Canadians. We have shown that by investing in the things that Canadians need, whether it is dental care or investments to fight climate change or grow the economy, or whether it is by putting more money into a program like the school lunch program, we are able to deliver for Canadians during tough times. If they decide to align themselves with the Conservatives who only want to cut, who only want to hurt Canadians at a time where we have to continue to invest, well, Canadians will judge the NDP appropriately. But I remain optimistic that we can continue to operate as a parliament and deliver for Canadians.
I'd like to look at the other side of things, your relationship with the provincial government in Newfoundland and Labrador. You've had disagreements before, especially when it comes to things like the carbon tax. But now here you are today announcing almost a deal together. What does this make of your relationship between the government of Newfoundland and Labrador and the federal government?
Well, I think for people who've been paying attention, they've seen that we've been able as a government to sign deals and deliver things for Canadians right across the country. Childcare agreements with Alberta, investments in housing in Saskatchewan. We even managed to make a few agreements signed with New Brunswick. We will work with people across the political spectrum to deliver for Canadians because that's what Canadians expect. And of course, it's always more fun to be standing beside my friend Andrew to deliver concretely for the people of Newfoundland and Labrador. And as we have across the country, there will always be multiple different solutions proposed and perspectives on different challenges. And that's one of the great things about Canada, that we get to work together and figure things out. And I have to say, I rarely have had better partners, even though we've seen disagreements on certain issues. The values are aligned, and the desire to deliver for Canadians is always at the forefront of everything that Andrew does. And I'm really happy to be showcasing that delivering food for kids in schools right across the country starts here in Newfoundland and Labrador because of Andrew Furey's leadership. Okay, what do you want to say a few words, Andrew?
So I'm happy to address that, and the Prime Minister and I have had frank and conversations about the areas of disagreement. And as the First Minister representing Newfoundland and Labrador, that is my job. My job is to stand up for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. I make no apologies for it, and I will always do it. And so while we have disagreements on things like carbon and cod, what we are here today to discuss is something that there is no disagreement on, that children deserve to go to school not thinking about where they're getting their next meal, that families deserve to have a break on groceries for their children and to take that stress off them. So while there will be disagreements, and managing a broad country with multiple different socio-political interests, perhaps there always should be disagreements. But this is something that we firmly agree on, and I have no doubt every parent in Newfoundland and Labrador would echo that statement.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, that is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, Premier Andrew Furey, and several cabinet ministers and MPs, federally and provincially, joining them for what was, on paper, an announcement about the expansion and development of school food program in Newfoundland and Labrador, an agreement between the federal and provincial governments, but what really became a question and answer session about the bombshell news from NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh that he is ending the Supply and Confidence Agreement, a deal signed in March of 2022, designed to keep the government in power and to function as a de facto majority government by until June of 2025, allowing the election to happen in October of next year. But here we are, September of 2024, and it's all over. Jagmeet Singh says he's ripped it up, says the Liberals are too selfish, too weak, and too beholden to corporate interests for this to continue any longer, and Justin Trudeau reacting to that. I'm David Cochran, the host of Power and Politics. We're going to turn you back to the regular network in about 5 minutes, but we've got our panel of party insiders, Greg McEachern with the Liberals, Melanie Richer with the NDP, Fred Delory with the Conservatives. Greg, the Prime Minister kind of shrugged off the news a little bit and said, hopes the NDP stays focused on all the issues like dental and pharmacare, and said, I'm not thinking about politics. Probably should think about politics on a day like this, don't you think?
I'm okay with him thinking about politics. But listen, top line, there's going to be a lot of Liberals that are happy with this today, so that their party is less NDP and more Liberal. Their party is less red-orange, and maybe we've seen some things around, the recent strike that they might see more red-blue, or the blue Liberals would have been happy. This is not a surprise. This has been telegraphed. What I do find interesting is the timing. At the end of August, Anne McGrath, Principal Secretary for the NDP, somebody I admire very much, said that there were still things that they wanted to get out of the deal. But yesterday, NDP Member of Parliament Matthew Green hinted that this was the direction that they're going in. We also had the Conservative leader attack Singh. So this seems like, I question the timing. It seems like it's in response to that. And we can't, as you and Rosie were discussing earlier, the 2 by-elections. Does this mean that the NDP are in trouble in Manitoba? Does this mean that they're not growing in Montreal, where it's supposedly a 3-way race? They had the candidate out first there. So I do think it does raise some questions. I don't understand why they would not have done this a little later in the month, closer to when Parliament returns on the 16th.
But either way, Fred, they've done it. Right? The Supply and Confidence Agreement is over. We're back to issue by issue, vote by vote. We're going to hear from Pierre Poilievre a little bit later this afternoon. He's out in British Columbia. He's going to challenge him. He's going to test him. What did you make of what the Prime Minister had to say in his response there?
Yeah, look, I thought it was interesting. He focused a lot on the stuff that they're doing in terms of all the programs. They're still missing that message that I've been asking for some time and hoping for from them if they want to get in this game. There's a lot of chatter. The NDP aren't happy that they're not getting credit for a lot of the things that the Liberals are going around announcing and doing. The funny part is, I don't think the Liberals are getting credit for it either. I don't know if these programs are resonating the way the Liberals and the NDP think they are. They are both half where the Conservatives are, who are opposing much of their programs. So again, it's that overall narrative and messaging that just remains missing.
Well, Mel, he probably didn't have time to prepare much of a message because the news was sent officially to the Prime Minister's office, within the last hour or so. Your thoughts on Justin Trudeau as we wrap up this news special?
Yeah, I agree with Fred. It kind of seemed like he didn't really know what to say, and to me, he was reinforcing the NDP's message of here are the things that we did for you without really saying the difference of what the Liberals will be without the NDP pushing them to do things. And it took them a really, really long time to get to the choice part, to the what's the difference between me and Conservatives? What is the risk of a Conservative government, right? He really focused on, again, amplifying what the NDP is taking credit for, is trying to take credit for dental care, pharmacare, et cetera. So I thought that was really interesting. Good point that maybe he didn't really have much time to think about it, but it to me, continued to show the lack of direction, the lack of this is why we're doing this from the Prime Minister and the Liberal government.
Is it about the by-elections, you think, for the NDP?
I don't think
so. They've got a chance to win 2 by-elections in the next 12 days or lose 2 by-elections in the next 12 days, right?
Totally. I was here in June or in July saying I think that this is going to happen in September. Am I surprised that it happened this week instead of next week at caucus retreat? Yeah, maybe a little bit. But then, they're making the news about them this week. They'll have the news about them next week when they have caucus retreat. So I don't think it's about the by-election. I think this is too big to really be on, 1 or 2 by-elections. I think this is something they were planning for a while.
Greg, I got about 30 seconds before we got to give the network back to Andrew Nichols. But This happens. Caucus is now sandwiched between must-win by-election and end of supply and confidence agreement. What does this mean for the Liberals when they get together next week?
It's going to change the conversations for sure. I think those in the party that are want to see more bluish color from in terms of policies that we've seen recently, I think it reflects what Canadians are feeling. Good news today that kind of got stepped on in terms of the interest rate cut, but I think this is going to change definitely the conversation around caucus. It does mean though that they have to be more vigilant. Going to be less travel outside of the House, and every confidence vote is going to be a nail biter.
Yep, they're going to have to work a heck of a lot harder than they've had to. Not that they haven't worked hard, but parliamentary-wise, it's going to be more difficult. Okay, gang, thanks for answering the bat signal on a busy breaking news day. Greg McEachran, Melanie Richer, Fred Delory, they're going to be back on Power and Politics on Friday at a new time, earlier in the show. We'll give you the details on that. I'm David Cochran. Thank you for watching this breaking news special here on CBC News Network. We'll be back at 5 o'clock Eastern Time with our regular edition of Power and Politics, where we'll have more coverage on this. Jagmeet Singh not speaking today, letting the video stand for itself. We will hear from Pierre Poilievre later. We're seeking Liberal reaction. So all of that at 5 Eastern. Now we hand it back to Andrew Nichols in Toronto.